Mesdames, Messieurs, votre attention s'il vous plaît. Nous allons bientôt démarrer la cérémonie. Monsieur le ministre de l'Éducation du Sénégal étant déjà sur place, nous vous prions très courtoisement de bien rejoindre également votre place pour nous permettre de démarrer. Merci. Nous voudrions d'abord vous souhaiter la bienvenue en terre sénégalaise et vous remercier d'avoir porté votre choix sur sa capitale, Dakar. La première partie de notre réunion va se dérouler ainsi. À la manière sénégalaise, nous allons d'abord vous souhaiter la bienvenue. Ensuite, nous allons démarrer la cérémonie protocolaire d'ouverture qui sera ponctuée de quelques discours. Mesdames et messieurs, Monsieur Serigne Mbaye Thiam, ministre de l'Éducation nationale. Merci beaucoup. Merci. Monsieur le ministre, avec votre permission, nous allons poursuivre la présentation du programme de la matinée. Nous disions que la première partie serait composée en fait de deux composantes. La première étant la cérémonie officielle d'ouverture qui sera ponctuée de discours et ensuite des allocutions liminaires. Et à la suite de ces deux activités, nous allons prendre la pause pour nous ressourcer et mieux reprendre le travail. Pour bien démarrer la journée, nous allons vous demander de bien vouloir prêter votre attention à l'endroit d'une grande diva sénégalaise qui va égrener quelques notes musicales pour vous souhaiter la bienvenue au Sénégal. Je vous nomme Mahawa Kouyaté. Mahawa Kouyaté. Je l'avais vu tout à l'heure dans la salle. Mahawa est-elle prête? Assalamu alaikum.
dama ne nañu jàng ndax jàng ci la xam-xam nekk jàng ci la yërmande nekk jàng ci la wér nekk ndax boo jàngul doo wér ndax ku jàng mooy mën a faj boo gisee ñuy jàng pour ñu am docteur bu ñuy faj boo gisee ñuy jàng pour ñu am borom xam-xam ba mën a denc réew mi ëllëg moo tax ma ne nañu jàng moo am lépp ndax dañu ne éducation loolu lañ ma wax mooy ouverture bi loolu moo leen dajale fi tey kiri karambero nanu manu sentiya Merci beaucoup.
C'est vrai, la musique a été belle, la voix aussi, la dame également, mais le message aussi. Mawa, dans sa chanson, vient de nous dire la portée de l'éducation dans nos sociétés. Il faut donc développer l'éducation pour avoir des enfants compétents, mais aussi avoir des maris tout aussi compétents. Encore une fois, merci Mawa pour ce beau message. Merci à vous également. Nous allons poursuivre la cérémonie par la série de discours et je voudrais également demander à Mawa de rester parce que nous allons encore faire appel à son talent tout à l'heure. Et notre premier orateur sera Monsieur Vincent Rigby, vice-président, Direction générale des politiques, stratégie et du rendement, Agence canadienne de développement international. Permettez-moi de le présenter en quelques mots et je demanderai également votre indulgence s'il y a des problèmes de prononciation. Ce n'est pas toujours facile. Je demanderai également votre indulgence parce que ces éminentes personnalités, il est extrêmement difficile de les présenter. Donc j'ai choisi de les présenter en 7 lignes, parce qu'il y en a plus de 7. Mais comme l'équité, c'est également une dimension importante, donc je me suis dit, j'entre par cet indicateur-là. Donc ce sera 7 lignes de présentation à peu près pour chacun et chacune. Monsieur Rigby a été nommé vice-président de la Direction générale des politiques stratégiques et du rendement en décembre 2010. Avant son arrivée à l'ACDI, M. Rigby était le directeur exécutif du Bureau de l'évaluation internationale, BEI, au Bureau du Conseil privé, BCP, où il relevait du conseiller à la sécurité nationale auprès du Premier ministre. Le BEI effectue des évaluations du renseignement sur les événements et les tendances dans le monde qui ont des répercussions sur les intérêts canadiens. Évaluation destinée bien sûr au Premier ministre et à d'autres hauts responsables du gouvernement. Monsieur Rigby, je vous prie de bien vouloir prendre la parole.
Thank you very much for those kind words and for the introduction. Excellences, distingués invités, mesdames et messieurs, je suis si heureux de me trouver parmi vous à Dakar et d'avoir le privilège de donner le coup d'envoi à cette rencontre mondiale sur l'éducation au-delà de 2015. Au nom du gouvernement du Canada, je tiens à remercier le gouvernement du Sénégal pour son accueil chaleureux et pour avoir organisé cette rencontre importante. Le Sénégal a accompli des progrès considérables en vue d'atteindre les objectifs mondiaux en matière d'éducation et nous le félicitons pour ces réalisations remarquables. Les gains réalisés auront des retombées positives et durables sur les perspectives de développement du pays et de ses habitants. Il est tout naturel que la consultation mondiale de l'ONU sur l'éducation se tienne à Dakar, puisque c'est ici qu'a pris naissance en 2000 notre engagement à l'égard de l'initiative Éducation pour tous. Ensemble, nous nous efforçons encore de miser sur les engagements que nous avons pris à Dakar pour faire en sorte que tous les enfants et les jeunes aient les connaissances et les habiletés voulues pour réaliser leur potentiel et que les adultes puissent apprendre davantage et perfectionner leurs compétences afin d'obtenir un emploi rémunérateur et de stimuler le développement social et économique. Ladies and gentlemen, education is a human right. It's a key building block for human development and for poverty reduction. Education is critical to the prosperity and to the security of families, of communities, and of nations. Access to quality schools, teachers, and curricula provides girls and boys with the foundations to ultimately access the labor market, raise their standard of living, and lift ultimately their families out of poverty. For instance, according to the World Bank, 1 additional year of schooling for girls and women increases their wages by at least 10%. It reduces the infant mortality rates of the children by at least 5% and results in their children remaining in school for an additional 1/3 to 1/2 year. Schools can also serve as a meeting point where the roots of tolerance, of respect, and of cooperation can be formed, whether it be intercultural or religious understanding or achieving greater equality between women and between men. By investing in the education of children and of youth, we can more quickly achieve the goals before us. Children and youth will be heading families and households in the future. They're going to be the workers and innovators that drive economies, and they're going to be the teachers and leaders of future generations. The Millennium Development Goal Framework succeeded in mobilizing international action and resources towards a common set of development objectives in support of poverty alleviation in developing countries. The simplicity of this framework made it easy to communicate the challenges, both at the local level and at the global level. The inclusion of quantifiable and time-bound targets provided a way to track progress and to foster accountability among both donors and recipient countries. Millennium Development Goal 2 on universal primary education and the Millennium Development Goal 3 target on gender parity in education have achieved real progress to date. According to the UNESCO Institute for Statistics, in 2010, 91% of children of primary school age were enrolled in schools, up from 84% in 1999. Significant progress has been made in narrowing the gender gap in primary school enrollment as well. However, progress in these areas has not been equitable. Children from the poorest households are less likely to enroll in school and more likely to drop out. This has been shown in Canada, and it is globally as well, true globally. 61 million children still remain out of school. To aggravate the situation, approximately 42% of them live in countries that are affected by conflict. Further, 127 million youth and 796 million adults are illiterate, 2/3 of whom are female. In the lead up to 2015, Canada and other members of the United Nations are working together with civil society, with academia, with the private sector, and other stakeholders to develop a consensus around issues for the next global development agenda. The United Nations is engaging stakeholders around the world in an inclusive, interactive process to ensure that we have a focused framework that reflects our common goals. This includes a series of national, regional, and global consultations, including 11 thematic consultations taking place in early 2013. These consultations will examine the success factors and lessons learned from the current Millennium Development Goal Framework and identify key issues that should be addressed in the post-2015 framework. Canada is truly proud to co-sponsor this consultation and to be a part of this process. Today marks a key milestone in our collective efforts to advance the education of children and youth, male and female, all around the world. We are gathered here to review progress in education since the beginning of the millennium in 2000, identify emerging priorities and cross-cutting themes and issues, and outline options for advancing education in the post-2015 development framework. In doing so, our voices and our efforts will help shape the future of education for years and years to come. Canada itself has a long-standing commitment to the global education goals. As we take stock of progress toward the MDGs, Canada believes education must remain a global priority and a priority of governments in the developing world. This is especially true in Africa, which has the youngest population globally. Last September, our Minister of International Cooperation, Julian Fantino, called for attention to the following issues: achieving equitable access to basic education, increasing education quality, improving learning across other development outcomes, and supporting the school-to-work transition. By strengthening education in these critical areas, we can achieve meaningful and lasting results for children and youth. Focusing on children and youth is the most effective and important investment we can make to break the cycle of poverty and to contribute to the success of societies and of economies. Je suis impatient d'entendre votre avis d'expert sur la manière dont nous pouvons collaborer à l'avenir pour nous assurer que tous les enfants et tous les jeunes acquièrent les connaissances et les compétences nécessaires pour bien réussir et contribuer au développement économique de leur pays ainsi que de leur communauté. Notre ministre se réjouira de connaître les fruits de cette consultation, dans l'espoir que nos efforts collectifs d'aujourd'hui renforceront davantage la volonté d'appuyer les aspirations en matière d'éducation des filles et de garçons. Nous sommes heureux d'appuyer l'UNESCO et l'UNICEF dans leurs efforts pour faciliter cette consultation. Nous remercions l'Allemagne qui a aussi fourni un grand soutien à cette consultation et constitue un important partenaire des progrès mondiaux en éducation. Nous aimerions également remercier la Fondation William et Flora Hewlett d'avoir joué un rôle clé dans l'appui à cette consultation. Et une fois de plus, merci au gouvernement du Sénégal d'avoir été l'hôte de cette importante rencontre. Nous savons que cette rencontre permettra de formuler de solides recommandations qui orienteront le groupe de personnalités de haut niveau chargé d'étudier le programme de développement pour l'après 2015 établi par le secrétaire général. Nos enfants méritent le meilleur départ possible dans la vie, au Canada, au Sénégal et sur toute la planète. À mesure que l'économie mondiale devient plus interreliée et le monde plus complexe et concurrentiel, l'éducation de nos enfants continue d'offrir l'un des meilleurs rendements possibles sur les investissements, non seulement pour la génération actuelle, mais aussi pour celle à venir.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a real pleasure for me to be here today, and I'm looking very much forward to working with you over the next couple of days to formulate some ambitious and worthy recommendations to provide the high-level panel. Many, many thanks.
Merci, Monsieur Vincent Rigby, vice-président, Direction générale des politiques, stratégie et de rendement, Agence canadienne de développement international. L'allocution suivante sera prononcée par Madame Gita Rao Gupta, directrice générale adjointe de l'UNICEF, que je voudrais brièvement vous présenter. Madame Gita Rao Gupta, directrice exécutive adjointe, a rejoint l'UNICEF en juin 2011. Elle apporte à l'Agence des Nations Unies pour les enfants plus de 20 ans d'expérience dans le domaine du programme de développement international, du plaidoyer et de la recherche. Avant sa nomination, Madame Rao a exercé les fonctions de Senior Fellow à la Fondation Bill et Melinda Gates de 2010 à 2011. Elle a été la conseillère principale au sein du programme de développement global sur la direction stratégique et la gestion des problématiques et projets transversaux. Madame Gita, je vous prie de bien vouloir prendre la parole. Merci.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Your Excellency, honorable colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be here with you in Dakar as together we help to chart the course for education in the post-2015 world. As the birthplace of the Education for All goals, which have opened classroom doors and enabled learning opportunities for millions of people since the year 2000, our venue bodes well. So thank you all for coming. A special word of thanks to the government of Senegal for their gracious hospitality, And thank you especially to the governments of Senegal, Canada, and Germany, and to the Hewlett Foundation for sponsoring this consultation. UNICEF is honored to work jointly with UNESCO to lead the education thematic consultation, and to all of you for your support, which is as critical as it is appreciated. Allow me to transport you momentarily from Dakar to New York, from where I have traveled, to the foyer of the United Nations headquarters. There you will find a powerful photographic exhibition entitled Journeys to School. This exhibit gives a moving insight into the lives of children all over the world and the lengths to which they go to get an education. It's humbling. It's humbling to see underprivileged children in South Calcutta, in the country to which I was born, India, always immaculately dressed, negotiate train tracks, urban pollution, and dangerously busy streets just to get to school. Or the children of Sertão, Brazil, who saddle up donkeys, horses, and wagons to travel for over 2 hours through the desert just to get to and from school. It's humbling to see 9-year-old Patricia from northwest Mexico brave canyons, steep trails, pine forests, and barbed wire fences just to get to and from school. Or the children of Guyana, who twice daily paddle canoes across the Moroni River just to get to and from school. And no one knows better than Sierra Leone's Chernobyl, who I know is with us today, what it's like to fight for an education through a bloody civil war, crippling poverty, and burning schools. An education which, I hasten to add, now includes a master's degree. I mention this exhibit to give our discussion context and urgency. Let's remember the daily journeys these children undertake, the obstacles they overcome, the sacrifices they make, the determination they radiate, and let's remember why they and their families do it. Because they believe that education is an investment in their futures, the key to greater opportunity and prosperity. So let's pledge to work as hard as they do and make their destinations worthy of those journeys, today and beyond 2015. If those children were here today with us, we could tell them all that we are off to a great start. Both UNICEF and UNESCO are impressed with the progress of the global consultations on education to date. We're especially pleased that the process has been so inclusive, with governments, private sector, and civil society all engaged. These discussions have led to several emerging conclusions. First, that education must be at the heart of whatever structure replaces the Millennium Development Goals. And that's because education is the cornerstone of the world we want to build, a world with less poverty and more prosperity for all. Second, that while we've made good progress in enrolling more children in school, we've had less success in giving them a quality education. Poor quality and irrelevant education has left too many children unable to fulfill basic tasks when they finish primary school, like signing their names. Lastly, that we will only achieve new goals and ambitions if education governance improves at the same time. That includes making governments, schools, teachers, community leaders more accountable and creating the transparent systems that allow parents and communities to directly hold their governments and schools more accountable. Also, at the heart of our discussions is the irrefutable fact that access to quality education is a basic human right. It gives people the opportunity to determine their own destinies, and it is the foundation from which we can achieve social justice even as we reduce social and economic inequities. This is as critical for individual well-being as it is for building strong nations. Because education is the single best investment that countries can make towards building thriving and equitable societies, it pays dividends in better health and nutrition, lower fertility rates, and increased social stability. So with these concerns and goals in mind, what are the challenges that we must overcome in the post-2015 world? Arguably, the greatest is inequalities. Inequalities limit education opportunities for the most disadvantaged and excluded children. Children with disabilities, children living in conflict zones or in the aftermath of natural disasters, nomadic children, those forced into labor, girls. Writing this is more than a moral necessity. Of course, it's only right and fair to give every child everywhere the same chance to live a full, healthy, and educated life. But equity is also a practical course of action. UNICEF has proved that a focus on equity not only saves more lives, it's also the most cost-effective way forward. We must place equity and inclusion front and center in our post-2015 plans. Another challenge that we must tackle is the current learning emergency. And yes, it is an emergency. It's estimated that up to 250 million children, which is equivalent to the population of Indonesia, receive such poor quality education that they cannot even read or write by grade 4. This is a tragedy for each and every child affected. It's also a waste on a catastrophic scale. Families sacrificing scarce resources, countries dedicating national budgets, development partners providing much needed support. Yet, we're struggling to translate that effort into quality learning and meaningful results for children. Fueling this emergency is the generation of young children who are not only denied good nutrition at birth and in their early years, but starved of a preschool education. This double blow irreparably damages their cognitive functions before they even start primary school and can greatly reduce educational performance at later stages. Post-2015, we must prioritize quality learning from preschool right through secondary school. And we must guarantee children a safe space to learn even during emergencies, in humanitarian disasters, in post-conflict and conflict zones. That is the only pathway to peace, to protect our children from the long-lasting devastation that such crises bring by giving them a foundation of a quality education. The last challenge I'm going to mention is also development's best chance, girls. Right now, more than 78 million girls are denied access to basic education, a shameful fact that limits the potential of each and every girl we let down, even as it hampers global development. Because when girls complete secondary school, they set in motion a virtuous cycle of delayed marriage, reduced fertility, healthier mothers and children, and increased incomes and economic growth. So as we renew our focus on girls, let's pledge to go beyond numerical parity to real gender equality. And remember that when girls go to school, everyone wins. Where there are challenges, so too there are opportunities. And there has never been a more exciting time in education. As the global landscape shifts, countries emerge, economies rise, and new donors step forward. Civil society is more engaged than ever before. The private sector is motivated. Never before have we had so many willing partners or networks, all of which is great news. Because to do justice to the post-2015 agenda, we must tap this wealth of expertise and experience and anticipate social-political change that may occur in the next decade or so. So let's pledge to work as hard as, and as we do, we must also make space for innovation and technology to transform education and learning. We might not know exactly how yet, but we do know technology will change how and where children learn. It will reduce costs. Teachers will enjoy greater resources and flexibility, and we will reach the hardest to reach children faster and more cost effectively. The possibilities for education in the post-2015 world are as endless as they are exciting. And so as we draft our recommendations today and tomorrow, let's be ambitious. Let us work together to reach our highest common ambition rather than compromise to create the lowest common denominator. And let's remember that education is much more than what happens in the classroom. It's the foundation from which we understand freedom and reasoning, negotiation, and social cohesion. It's a window through which we interpret our world with all its beauty, diversity, and riches. And it's what children the world over yearn for, get up for, walk miles for, risk their lives for every single day. We owe them our best education and destinations that are worthy of those journeys. Thank you very much.
Voilà, merci beaucoup Madame Gita. Nous allons poursuivre les allocutions et c'est au tour de Monsieur Chiang Tan, sous-directeur général pour l'éducation à l'UNESCO. Je voudrais brièvement vous le présenter. Ancien professeur de lycée, Dr Tang a travaillé dans le domaine des affaires académiques et éducatives au sein de l'ambassade de Chine au Canada de 1985 à 1989. Au début des années 1990, il a travaillé au ministère de l'Éducation chinois sur les questions relatives à l'enseignement et à la formation technique et professionnelle, puis au bureau de la science et de la technologie du gouvernement de la province du Shanxi. Dr Tang a rejoint la section pour l'enseignement technique et professionnel de l'UNESCO en 1993. Devenant directeur de la division de l'enseignement secondaire, technique et professionnel en 2000. Avant sa nomination comme sous-directeur général pour l'éducation en avril 2010, il a exercé les fonctions de directeur du bureau exécutif du secteur de l'éducation et de sous-directeur général adjoint pour l'éducation. Monsieur Tang, je vous prie de bien vouloir prendre la parole, s'il vous plaît. Merci.
Honorable Minister, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to participate in this event. I sincerely thank the government of Senegal and Canada for co-hosting this event, as well as Germany and the William and the Flora Hewlett Foundation, who have provided very welcome support. UNESCO has been privileged to co-lead this important process with UNICEF. This has led to a very close and constructive cooperation between our two organizations. We are here to consider the future of education in the development agenda. I do not need to remind those of you here today of the important role played by education in development. Done well, it empowers individuals and is critical in building equitable and sustainable societies that respects human rights. Done badly, it entrenches the social and economic marginalization of vulnerable groups, and by promoting prejudice can even set the scene for conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, as we gather here to decide on the future course of actions for our EFA movement, we must consider what the last decades have taught us and build on those lessons. What can we learn so far, and what have we learned so far? The first lesson is that education for all is still very much an unfinished agenda. We know that we will not have achieved equitable access to effective and relevant basic education for all by year 2015. Too many children are still out of school, and youth and adult literacy, school dropout, and inadequate learning outcomes persist at levels that are simply unacceptable. A basic lesson from year 2000 is that we have not paid sufficient attention to the quality of learning. Teachers are central to quality learning at all levels, and in all settings of education. As the role of teachers evolves from transmitters of knowledge to enabler of learning, their preparation, status, and conditions must remain a central concern. This is why at the Global Education for All meeting held in Paris last November, education ministers committed to a last big push to accelerate efforts to reach the goals by year 2015. I'm confident that the Global Education First initiative launched by the United Nations Secretary General on the 26th of November last year will be successfully in mobilizing heads of state and other world leaders around this critical agenda. Keeping in mind that current EFA goals therefore remain very relevant, the starting point for any discussion of the education agenda after 2015 must be the fundamental question of how education can and should contribute to shaping the type of a society we want. UNESCO firmly believes that this requires a humanistic and integrated vision of education in which the acquisition of a basic learning competencies such as literacy is accompanied by the fostering of ethical attitude and behaviors such as respect for human dignity, cultural diversity, and the natural environment. We call this education for global citizenship, which encompasses civic behavior and engagement both locally and globally. Dear colleagues, our vision for education after 2015 must therefore be founded on some basic principles. This vision needs to reconfirm two fundamental principles. The first is that right to quality education is a fundamental human right, entrenched in normative frameworks and built into the legislation of most countries. The second fundamental principle is that education is a public good. The state must be the custodian of the principle of the education as a public good, paying particular attention to the promotion of equality. I was in Dubai this weekend at the Global Education and Skills Forum, which gathered over 500 education stakeholders, including Minister of Education and private sector leaders, to examine how multi-stakeholder partnership in education can be strengthened. While governments must be in the driving seat, we also need to recognize that the delivery of education is a collective responsibility that involves families, communities, civil society organizations, and the business. We need to do a better job of harnessing all of these stakeholders to improve the delivery and the financing of education. Building upon these two fundamental principles, UNESCO envisaged four basic approaches to the post-2015 agenda. First, concern for peace and sustainable development should be at the center of our efforts to promote the inclusive and equitable development beyond 2015. In a context of environmental degradation, water scarcity, climate change, armed conflict, poverty, and growing inequalities between and within countries, education can and should play a critical role in installing the values, knowledge, and the skills to deal with this crisis. Education for global citizenship is already included in many countries' education curriculum, but we need to give more thought to how to make this into a measurable goal. Second, any post-2015 development framework must be of universal relevance. If sustainability is to be a central concern of a new international development agenda, then such a framework must be of relevance to all countries. It must mobilize all countries, regardless of their specific development status, around a common framework of goals aimed at inclusive and sustainable development. At the same time, this framework must allow for target setting at the regional and the national levels in order to respond to many social, economic, and cultural contexts. Creating a framework that is universally relevant, which take into account for specific needs of each country, will be an important challenge. Third, we need to strengthen the link between education and other development sectors. This is a two-way relationship. Education is an enabler for reaching all the Millennium Development Goals, but it's also dependent on progress in other policy areas. We must do more to ensure that measures taken in one policy area support those in others more coherently and effectively. Finally, we need to define a framework for learning in the 21st century that promotes development of inclusive lifelong learning systems. The learning environment is changing rapidly, and we must ensure that learning takes place throughout life and empowers learners to learn to be, to learn to do, and to live together. It's crucial to promote lifelong learning frameworks that provide comprehensive and flexible pathways combining formal, non-formal, and informal opportunities in order to cater the delivery of learning methods. Ladies and gentlemen, UNESCO is continuing to framing the post-2015 education agenda in many ways. It has recently set up an international senior expert group to revisit the two landmark reports, the 1996 Gllobal report and the 1972 Fogg report, to consider their relevance for today's education challenges. The outcome of this review will be submitted to UNESCO's General Conference this autumn, and it will be a valuable input, I believe, to the post-2015 education agenda debate. Following requests from our member states, particularly in Africa, UNESCO is also supporting the development of a national assessment of progress towards EFA since 2000. Complementing the Education for All Global Monitoring Report, this nationally led assessment will steer countries' debate on their future education agenda. They will provide input into regional synthesis, which in turn will feed the Global Education Forum that the government of the Republic of Korea has kindly agreed to host in the spring of 2015, which will summarize achievements since year 2000 and formulate a new education global agenda. The World Conference on Education for All, Dakar, in year 2000 provided the perfect setting for the education community to agree on the Dakar framework for action. This was a very ambitious and a forward-looking perspective on education up to 2015. I'm confident that Dakar in 2013 will inspire us to come up with an equally ambitious and relevant framework for education beyond 2015. I thank you for attention. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, M. Toine. Nous allons maintenant passer à la quatrième allocution qui sera faite par M. Serigne Mbaye Thiam, ministre de l'Éducation nationale du Sénégal. Difficile à présenter, mais je vais faire un effort pour y parvenir. M. Serigne Mbaye Thiam est expert comptable agréé. Il a été plusieurs fois député à l'Assemblée nationale du Sénégal. Ancien lauréat du concours général sénégalais, il est aussi titulaire d'un brevet de parachutiste et de préparation militaire du Prétané militaire de Saint-Louis. C'est dire qu'aux âmes bien nées, la valeur n'attend point le nombre d'années. Nommé ministre de l'Enseignement supérieur et porte-parole du gouvernement en avril 2012, Il devient ministre de l'Éducation nationale en octobre de la même année. Monsieur le ministre, je vous prie de bien vouloir prendre la parole, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup. Madame la directrice générale adjointe de l'UNICEF, Monsieur le directeur délégué de l'UNESCO pour l'éducation, Madame la présidente du conseil d'administration du partenariat mondial pour l'éducation, Monsieur le vice-président de l'ACDI, Monsieur l'envoyé spécial du secrétaire général des Nations Unies pour les jeunes, Mesdames, Messieurs les ministres, secrétaires d'État, secrétaire général de ministère et membres de délégation, Mesdames, Messieurs les membres du corps diplomatique, Mesdames, Messieurs les représentants des partenaires techniques et financiers, Mesdames, Messieurs les représentants des organisations de la société civile et du secteur privé, Mesdames, Messieurs les experts internationaux, Mesdames, Messieurs, honorables invités, à vos titres et qualités. Je voudrais tout d'abord féliciter M. Rigby, Mme Gupta et M. Tang pour la qualité et la pertinence de leur intervention qui nous place déjà au cœur du sujet. Mme Gupta en particulier a parlé de ce voyage vers le savoir d'enfants de Calcutta, du Brésil, du Mexique, qui dans des conditions difficiles saisissent toutes les opportunités pour accéder à la connaissance. Il m'a été donné l'occasion, dans le cadre de mes tournées à l'intérieur du pays, de pouvoir compléter ce tableau de voyage vers le savoir que vous avez indiqué, Madame Gupta. J'ai vu des enfants qui ont étudié tout leur cycle primaire et tout leur cycle secondaire dans des paillotes, qui sont des abris provisoires. Et une des filles fait tous les jours 5 kilomètres dans la brousse pour accéder à son école. Et ce qui a été le plus encourageant pour nous, et comme vous l'avez dit, qui doit nous inciter à prendre à cœur la mission qu'on nous a confiée, c'est que tous ces enfants de cette école ont réussi à 100% à leur examen en fin d'études moyennes. C'est avec un immense plaisir